Welcome back to Piers Morgan Says. So what is a university? What is it? I mean, it used to be a place that our bright young minds would go to expand those minds, to be challenged, to take risks, to take part in rigorous debate with people who may implacably disagree with them, and then maybe reach a point of consensus and go and have a beer together, have some fun. That was what universities used to be about. But look at what they've become. They've become these cotton wool, bubble-wrapped hellholes where the enemy is free speech, where there's a charge for safe spaces, where everyone gets triggered. What does that even mean, to be triggered by something you might read or hear? Certainly my generation doesn't understand what that means. So what is going on at our universities? Well, a shocking new report by the Higher Education Policy Institute, HEPI, revealed a dramatic and disturbing surge in support for censorship by students, safe spaces, protection from alternate viewpoints. This is all among young students, and of the 1,000 who were surveyed, nearly 2/3 of them, 61%, were opposed to unlimited free speech, compared with just 37% in the exact same survey in 2016. 17% only said they supported ensuring unlimited free speech on campus, although offence may occasionally be allowed. And a staggering 86% of them endorse the use of trigger warnings so they can be protected from coursework that might upset them. More than a third of the students believe their teachers should be fired for exposing them to any material they find offensive, which is double the number in 2016. 39% believe the student union should ban all speakers who might cause offence, and 76% want universities to get rid of any statues or memorials to historical figures they find problematic, which, of course, by their yardstick, is now pretty much everybody. You might remember the scenes in the BLM protests in 2020 in Parliament Square, where statues of Winston Churchill, Nelson Mandela, and Mahatma Gandhi all had to be boarded up, lest the mob come for them. So my view is this is all completely nuts. But I'm joined now by Therese Kennedy, the president of the National Union of Students, who presumably... Good evening to you, by the way.
Good evening.
I know you've had a tough journey from Croydon. Every journey from Croydon's tough, right?
Look,
I used to say that joke with Susanna Reid. You went to the same school as Susanna Reid.
I did indeed.
OK, well, I'll take that as a warning, a trigger warning. Look, this report to me was incredibly damaging. You're representing the National Union of Students. What's going on at our universities? Why have you all become the enemy of free speech? Why do you all get triggered by everything? Why have you all become such snowflakes?
Interesting that you want to position students as enemies of free speech when it's the very opposite. In fact, this report shows that so many students are welcoming the idea of a free speech champion, but also are welcoming the idea that we can hold multiple truths, that yes, we have to uphold freedom of speech, but we also need to put in place protections to make sure that our campuses are a safe space for the evolving people who are coming into them.
What does that mean?
And if you want to ask what that means, it means that when you've got someone who has views that are obviously going to spark outrage, that you give a heads up to the people coming. These are common sense kind of things that students are talking about. And in fact, if I may finish my point, when you talk to people in local communities, when you talk to ordinary people and you talk about the real realities of these measures that students are suggesting, like giving a heads up to people or like, helping facilitate protests and so on, people on the ground agree that these are just common sense things to avoid.
Actually, they don't. I don't know who you're talking to, but they don't.
I don't know who you're talking to.
Most people think this is all completely crackers.
What is crackers?
Well, let me go through. Let me go through.
Crackers?
What do you need trigger warnings for about stuff you may read or stuff a professor may say? Why do you need trigger warnings? I mean, what happens? You literally have this sound.
I think this is a pretty...
Does that go off in
Obviously, you don't do that. I think what we're seeing here is actually what the report warns about. It's people like you who are creating these kind of inflammatory headlines and responses to what is a pretty
I've just read the report.
Issue.
No,
you've said that there's going to be a sound played out in classrooms. That's not what's happening in universities. If it was a joke, it wasn't very funny.
That was a joke. You may not find my humour funny, but it was intended as a joke. Okay. However, I do not understand the concept of a trigger warning for something you may read or hear at university. The whole point of university is to be challenged.
It's to be critical. And in fact, it's students who are... No, it's about learning to be critical of the things that you see and hear and absorb around you. And in fact, it's students who are standing up...
And tolerant.
The purpose of an education is not to produce tolerance.
Here's what Ricky Gervais said about free speech, and tell me if you think he's wrong. If you don't believe in free speech for people who you disagree with and even hate for what they stand for, then you don't believe in free speech.
No, you don't. But if you don't believe that freedom of speech has the legal limitations that it has always had in democratic countries when it comes to the Equalities Act and other forms of limits that have been always put on freedom of speech, then you also don't believe in freedom of speech. You believe in freedom from consequence. And those are different things.
I think you should be absolutely held to the fire. There should be consequences to what you say, and you should be challenged, and there should be debate. What I can't get my head round is that 86% of students now want trigger warnings on course content, which might upset students.
All we're really saying here is that it's going to note what's in the course. That's called a bibliography.
What would you find
Are you against bibliography?
What would you find?
Are you against bibliography?
What would you find?
Are you against?
Let me ask you. Let me ask you. What would you find too triggering to read? Give me an example.
I can't give you a personal example because it's not my personal opinion.
Of students.
This is students who are just saying, tell me what's on the course. That's what a course list is. That's what a book list is. That's what a bibliography is. It's not a big deal. And the fact that you're making it into a big deal is exactly what it says in the report.
What is a big deal?
You have bad faith actors, if I may continue. You have bad faith actors who are stirring up division around this when so many organisations, most of whom usually disagree, are saying this is a non-issue. And then you have to ask the question, why do we have so much airtime on this? Why do we have so many people pouring money and resources, particularly so our government, into talking about this? And when you see it in the context of the policing bill, of all of the other bills that are coming through that are incredibly draconian, you have to ask the question, who is benefiting from this conversation? Because it's not students. Because students are welcoming freedom of speech, and that's exactly what this report says. It said they welcome
it actually says the complete opposite. It says that
if you read it that way, of course it does. If you read the Daily Mail's report,
it was literally, actually, I read it in the Times. There was the exact,
Interesting.
Okay, there was the exact same survey done 6 years ago, same questions, and they published the results. It shows,
language changes.
It shows a massive increase in the number of students who want to censor
It's not
free
censorship.
speech.
It's about holding multiple truths, and the fact that we've got such a reductionist, reductionist, diluted conversation around freedom of speech that even when you're saying, I can never finish a point. What was the point of asking me on?
Listen, because I wanted to hear your view.
So please let me share the view.
But if you say something,
let me share the view. Let the people
I know you're not
view.
used to debating at universities these days, so let me debate.
Clearly, you're not used to debating because you're not letting me get in.
You're obviously used to just saying what you want to say, and no one's allowed to challenge you.
That is not what happens in universities. I'll tell you that for free.
Well, actually, we know that's what's happening in universities. And
when was the last time you went to university, Piers? When was the last time you were a student?
I was a student when I was 19.
Oh, how old are you? That's a long time ago. That is a long ass time ago.
You're being ageist.
Can I say that?
Are you being ageist?
No, I'm just saying.
Wow.
That's a fact. It was a long time ago.
Triggered. Can you not? No, can you not
be? You're the snowflake here.
Can you not be ageist?
You're the snowflake here.
Can you not be ageist?
All I'm saying is, how can you know what's going on at our university?
I'm just reading this report.
You're reading a report that says that students welcome a freedom of speech.
This is the Higher Education Policy
that says that students want to make sure that, yes, there is freedom of speech, but also that we're enabling support for students who...
Can I ask a question?
Campuses are students'
Can I ask a question without you getting offended?
I'm not offended. Right, you couldn't offend me if you're trying.
Okay, great. Great.
Go ahead.
I love that.
I'm a black woman in this country. You can't offend me.
I don't want to offend you. I want to give you my honest opinion.
Please
you give me yours. What is multiple truths?
Multiple
truths. Because last time I checked, there's only one truth. Facts are facts. That's it.
That's not a very good philosophical outlook. Maybe you should go to uni. Maybe you should go to uni.
It's called the fact.
Anyway,
there's only one truth.
To answer your question...
Do you agree there's only one truth?
To answer your question, what does it mean? It means that it's both possible to enable freedom of speech, as our students' unions do day in and day out, but that it is also possible to make sure that we're hearing the voices of people who, you know, our campuses and our communities of education are often the homes of these students as well. So when they're saying, I want to have the space to speak out about what's happening here, I want to have the space to protest, I want to have the space to share alternative views, that is them exercising their democratic right to freedom of speech too.
That's all fine. But let me bring in Therese Purcell. She's the former president of the Young Americans for Freedom in Buffalo. Before we speak to Therese, I want to just play a clip. This is what happened. She invited a prominent black Republican lieutenant colonel, Alan West, to speak at the University of Buffalo on a subject called America is not racist, why American values are exceptional. During the Q&A session, protesters began chanting and banging on the walls. West, who was the speaker, was escorted by police out of the event as protests continued outside. Theresa, you were with West and the police escort. You got separated. The protesters chased you into a bathroom where you had to hide for hours as they shouted, "Go get her." and were screaming. We've got a bit of footage. We can't actually see you in it, but here's a bit of the footage from what was an alarming experience.
They're going after Therese! I know! You're a loser! And the rest of us are Black lives! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace! No justice! No peace!
Now, Therese, I remember this incident. I remember thinking, God, a young woman who invites a speaker is basically in fear of her life from a mob that is behaving in such a shameful manner. What was it like for you, and what do you think of this whole report that's come out in the UK about more and more students wanting to censor free speech?
Hi, Piers. Thank you so much for having me on. The overall experience was really terrifying. I hosted Colonel West since a lot of colleges in the United States, and it might be similar in the UK, only host one side of the political spectrum. They only host speakers on the left. So with the help of Young Americans Foundation, I wanted to bring a conservative speaker to campus to talk about these important issues of race and American exceptionalism. And I think that the report that came out recently that shows that college students are not supportive of free speech is very alarming. And I saw this on my own college campus by just trying to host a speaker that they didn't agree with. They tried to run me off campus and tried to terrify me, and I was afraid for my life as over 200 protesters were chasing me. And as you said, I had to hide in a men's bathroom and call the police as they were shaking doors and screaming, go get her, capture her, we need to get Therese. So overall, I find it really concerning that students don't value free speech, as they seem to only value speech that fits their narrative and don't want to hear from the opposing side, which is what college is all about, is having those debates.